Welcome to our June meeting, which is weird because I feel like June is like over and I didn't really experience it in any meaningful way. So our time together is really flying by, and this month marks a good milestone for us because we completed all 3 of our scheduled listening sessions. So kudos to everyone who helped with that, particularly if you attended and helped with the door prizes, taking notes, sharing your thoughts. So even though you were committee members, those of you who attended, I really welcomed you to share because you're experiencing, even if we've talked about the topics, you're experiencing the topics differently when the patrons are here in that dialogue. So I really appreciate all of your contributions. And I think people enjoyed their time, it seemed like. I'll be interested in hearing any feedback you have, but at least my impressions were people learned some things. We had really good civic discourse. That was great. I don't think there was anyone or anything that truly went outside in that sort of metaphorical parking lot. I think everything was really constructive and on task, so that's fantastic. For those of you who got to come to one or more sessions, off the top of your head, you don't have to get heavy into details, but what are some of your initial impressions of what you heard and saw and how you think things went?
I thought there was a genuine excitement for everybody that was there to participate and share what they had to bring.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good.
I think people were surprised by some of the things that go on at the library and what's available, as I was sharing with you, the tools, reserving tools. And so my one friend said, I went and reserved a Dremel tool because I'm only going to use it once or twice, and why would I buy one? This is great. So they were unaware, and now they know, and they'll help spread the word.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is tell your friend to tell all of her friends, and they can tell all of their friends. Because I really think that's what
the best way of sharing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think, not in the session necessarily that I was at, but from what I think Mike and Doris were saying last night, is people were still saying, well, how do we find out about this stuff?
I would say that at least in the second session, so Thursday's session, people definitely acknowledged the fact that they know the information is in a lot of places, and they acknowledge that at some point people have to go and look for it.
Although when we asked the teens, okay, would you rather go after the information or have it pushed out to you? Oh, push it out to me.
Pushed it out,
The younger generations are very, okay, I'm just gonna say it, lazy. Like, it has to be right in front of them. They don't seek the information. Usually somebody has to give it to them, or it has to come to them.
Did they give a suggestion on how to get it to them? How to push it to them?
Their concrete suggestion that I recorded in the raw notes was they really like Instagram, TikTok.
But they don't follow us on Instagram.
Right, and that's the
We
hurdle.
brought that up.
And
they
so
didn't seem to be aware of Instagram.
what I want to say at a high level, because we will not solve that today, no matter what we debate, we will not solve it. The high level is that I heard everybody who came to our sessions heard about this differently. There was there were a few people that were there together that heard about it together, but there was a wide variety, which reminds me and us, and thinking about communication plans, that there is no one communication tool that is going to be your, I did it, I reached everyone. And that is a really challenging takeaway, because it means a lot of energy has to be put into your communication strategies, because you can't just rely on the calendar, you can't just rely on the newsletter, you can't just rely on your website, you can't just rely on your social media. So that, I think, is a really that's going to be a tough nut for us to crack and how we craft a strategy around it. But that was huge to me, that even amongst a group that felt, kind of some similar ages, some similar lifestyles, and yet all of them had a different take on how they found out about it.
Conversation that we had at yesterday's board meeting, we were kind of talking about how things went. We mentioned about communication, but we also heard from a number of people about programming. Right, programming is like a big deal here, and a bigger deal than having programming is not being able to get into the program that you want to get into.
Yeah.
And so, whether we're talking about how do you deal with the communication thing or how do you deal with the programming thing, I'm thinking as we go into what type of questions do we ask in a survey, it should kind of lean in on those types of things, right? So we can get, now, I think we all can kind of trust the anecdotal stuff.
Yeah.
People are not making stuff up.
Yes.
But if you have hundreds of surveys and it's pretty clear, well, now you definitely have a priority that you have to address regardless of what it is.
And let me take a step back from that about the programs and ask a provocative question. For any of you who heard about the patrons' feedback about programs, were you surprised by anything that they said?
No.
No.
Right? They like the programs are popular, it's hard to get into them, registration can be frustrating. I feel like at least I expected to hear that. I was hoping maybe to hear some things that the community might see as solutions to that.
That part I found interesting, and it was good to hear that people were thinking of trying to have some kind of solution.
Yeah.
And we're willing to share those. A lot of them we did discuss some of those at the board meeting last night, and a lot of them are just not plausible.
Well, and some of them felt punitive in a way that would require staff to intervene and say, how many times has so-and-so signed up for yoga? How many times has someone missed, bonked out of their registration and missed? And I think that would create, could it be more equitable? Maybe, but is the payoff and return on investment from your staff, is that worth the time and effort? I just don't know.
One of the board members had about the only suggestion that I think I've heard that maybe would kind of work, and that would solve two problems. And Carrie's a little unsure if it could work, but she said we need more volunteers, and she said, well, maybe if people would start volunteering so many hours, then you get first pick of your program.
Which again, if there was a mechanism to guarantee it, sure.
The only way that you can do that is if you gave them a spot pre-registered, right? Like before you put out the registration.
I think for everything you come up with, you can come up with a con.
Of course.
Yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
what, and then you don't want to be paralyzed and not do anything.
Right.
Right, and that would be a reward if somebody came in and they would have to do the hours prior. But what if then they just come here and sit and do nothing,
Or they don't want to do what's needed.
Right. We don't want to be in the business of creating jobs for
Yeah,
volunteers.
right. Yeah, it's we're going to assign you this job, and if you don't want to do it, then you can.
If we're talking about
But again, that's
solutions,
more work.
Yeah, and that's what we want to get away from.
I mean, how much outside the box, outside of the information we hear from the community conversations and the surveys, should we be doing? Like, okay, we've heard all this type of stuff, it doesn't look like we have anything yet. Should we start going down that path now? We have two different camps.
Right.
We have the rec department that does a whole bunch of different stuff. And we have the library that has a whole bunch of different programs. And like a lot of organizations, do we silo ourselves and work individually, or figure out ways that if we work together, we might be able to solve some of the problems?
Well, let me give a harsh answer. So we think about the library's mission and vision, and we think about I don't know what Franklin's rec department's mission and vision is, but
To make money.
Sure, and I can think of things that are recreational that I can easily imagine, a kickball, a pickleball class. So the library could decide that fitness and movement is not the library's land, and that fitness and movement is and should be the rec departments. So the library decides, we will not do Tai Chi, we will not do yoga, we will not do walking, we will not do movement, fitness, wellness that fits into that physical space. Whether or not the rec department chooses to take up that mantle, the library could say, it's just mission adjacent, it's not within our core functions, which is lifelong learning, reading, enrichment. And again, I'm speaking like as a hypothetical library director. So you'd be in tension in that people have a thing that they like, that you'd be saying, we've decided our resources are better elsewhere. All that time and effort that goes into the yoga classes and the Tai Chi and whatever falls into that bucket at the library, that opens up space for a second version of the book club that people like so much. It opens up space for a new lecture because you're not paying a yoga teacher any longer. Now, you might have people who really love yoga and they no longer, and maybe the rec department doesn't offer it, or maybe the rec department
It's
charges
just
more.
expensive, I think, yeah.
So that could be a hard line that the library could take, that our programming really fits into these boxes because our budget is, we want to secure the budget, we want to stay on mission, and we want to ensure that all of our programs have the highest, best attendance. Well, a lecture could probably seat, what do you think, Carrie? How many people?
I mean, we can get 150.
So 150 in one program, one effort. To get 150 people for yoga, you'd probably have to have 3 classes, 4 classes.
Yeah, there's like 40
So
people.
3 reservations of your
50
room,
plus, yeah.
3 times that you've paid the yoga teacher. So I'm not saying I'm right. What I'm saying is that's an option to say, okay, we've heard you. It's hard to get in these classes. People are being unnecessarily excluded. Is yoga the library's mission? We think that should shift to rec department. So that's one example.
Okay, I'll just follow up on that one example.
Yeah.
I do take the yoga class here on Saturday mornings, which is free.
Yeah.
And sponsored by the library. I also take yoga through the rec department and pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that expensive, and it's well worth it. That class, though, has maybe, I'm gonna guess 12 to 15 people max.
Yeah.
And of course, the Saturday yoga has so many more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
So
you know,
right.
some of us choose to do both, and there are
Yeah.
a number of people who are doing both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I've had people say, I would be willing to pay for my yoga class here at the library if that's the problem. And you were sharing with me that we can't charge, is that correct?
There are very sticky
Yes.
wickets with
There are
that.
we cannot charge for a program. It's part of our like programming policy. We can charge for supplies, so that's why we can charge for cooking supplies or art supplies. There are no supplies to charge for yoga, so it has to be a free program. And I know people, but then if people want to pay for it, then turn around and say, then why don't you donate money to the library and say specifically, I would like to go
I would like to
help pay
sponsor
for
specifically, yes.
chair yoga.
Yeah, we did
And I don't mean to
suggest
pick
that.
on yoga, but that was an obvious answer to me where there's an agency that
Yeah.
could be responsible for that. Now on the flip side, the library could decide that one of our core audiences that we're seeing in the demographics that gave us the feedback in our sessions, we are going to limit what we do towards teens, and we are going to put that effort from teens into older adults, senior citizens, whatever we want to call that category, because our data shows that those are our highest users. It shows that that's where our community's growth is, and sorry teens, our mission is shifting for the next strategy this direction. So the efforts, and again, I'm not saying I'm right, it's just simply an example, but there will probably have to be some prioritizations unless the library says, okay, our programs have expanded so far, we need a dedicated programmer to manage all of this. I am stunned that almost no one, unless I missed it, said that this building needs expansion to handle more programming. I am shocked because usually people are just like, knock out a wall, make a bigger room, and almost no one said that.
Yeah, people in Franklin are also very, historically,
Yeah.
We had a couple,
historically, they have been very much on, oh, you give me everything I want, don't you dare raise my taxes.
Right, right. And I could sense that undercurrent in some of the things that we talked about, that no one really said it truly explicitly, but it seemed to be an underlying or an implication in the conversations that I was trying to generate around, what do you think about the building? What would be your priority? And a lot of those answers were maintenance of effort, right?
I feel like people were hinting towards, we want more meeting rooms, we want more, like the children's room to be bigger, because this room was too big, but that room is too small, so like to have, but when you would suggest something towards, like, okay, if we had to say expand the building, then we would have to go this route, then everybody was like, oh.
Right, yeah. And that's okay, because again, I'm merely asking questions just to
Right,
sort of
right.
test everybody's opinions and
When you
appetites.
explained how that would work,
Right.
everybody was like,
Everybody got a little,
yeah.
but no one said it explicitly, but you could see the reaction.
See, yeah, it seems like people want you to, just because they think the priority just sort of changed. Like, you're right, we do have a building that's fine, but we still want to maybe see what can we change within the building to somehow make
Yeah.
more room.
Since
Because
we're talking about money, there were some things that were done in the past, I don't know if we're still doing that. If you decided that, yes, you're gonna get a receipt, so you have a reminder as to when the things that you checked out are due,
Yeah.
there would be something that would print out, those things that you borrowed from the library saved you
Right.
X number of
Right.
dollars.
like you get at Kohl's,
Yes.
you saved
Yes.
$75.
So they
and
take
only spent
they
$5.
take the list price inside of the catalog and tally it all up, and so
the
you've got
reason-
10 DVDs, it's $200 or whatever.
Well, the reason for bringing that up is that I think people maybe, besides not knowing about all the different stuff that the library does, not knowing what it costs.
Yeah.
I had a really crazy idea. You get your tax bill, you know what all sorts of different charges are. It would be really nice to see, okay, you as a homeowner, this amount of taxes is going for the library.
Yes.
And I think people would see how
That would be helpful.
small that number is, and then when you compare that to the return on that investment of what your community gets out of it, it's a really powerful exercise.
It's a visibility
Yeah.
thing, so everybody's
Yeah.
going to get it, whether they look at it or not. When you
Correct.
bring it to their attention, I think it makes it a little bit easier then to get financial support when you go to the city and say, and in fact, all of these 20 people behind me who have their tax bills, they're in favor of this too, right? So it's not just people on the library board or Jennifer going, it's people who use the library who say, yeah, give them more money, or whatever it would be.
Someone did actually bring that exact same thing up in my community conversation, Mike. She literally said pretty much exactly what you just said, but she wants to see it on her tax bill as a taxpayer here.
Was
in
she the one
Franklin.
who had the sheet
Yes.
with her? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And that's transparency, just sharing
Yeah.
what is covered
And
in
Right.
the library.
she is a fierce advocate,
Mm-hmm.
the woman who brought it up. So, yeah,
That would be smart.
I think there'd be some advocation for that to the city if that is
Yeah.
something.
We can't get bills from the city on time. How are we gonna get them to do?
Well,
I mean, it's
could-
great. We should.
Yeah, but when it comes to collecting money, I bet you those things better be paid on time. That
And
might
I
be a
would
different story.
put this out there, and I don't mean to sort of shift this off,
Well,
but McFliss is strategizing towards getting a data analyst. This would be an incredible piece of data for McFliss to help calculate.
Oh, yeah.
Because taxes are public record, right?
Yep.
So maybe initially it's not each individual taxpayer, but it's the average homeowner in Franklin pays
Yeah.
$36 based on the millage rate and the percentage and whatever. And so $36 each year is, and I'm sure that's a lowball number, but
Right.
so the average person, then as you maybe generate some interest and dialogue around that, then you can maybe coordinate with the city to think about, and it might not be timely, maybe it's, it's the 2024 tax year, but you're looking at the 2023 number. So that might be
Right.
recent historic, but you might be able to get some, if you have a little bit of data run for you, maybe there's some momentum that you could get, because I would have to think there might be other city departments that would want the same type of visibility.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
tried doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, there's so much, and it's hard to quantify like prevention.
Mhm.
Or if it's not in your tax bill, at least when you have that whole big sheet that explains stuff, put it in a simple, don't bury it with all of the other
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
They do have a pie chart that they have
Yeah.
hanging up outside the treasury that breaks it down by like school district, county, municipality. So it can't be
That much
that
harder
much
than what they
right,
already
more
have.
work
Right,
Yeah.
right.
to just break down that chunk of the pie.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think also focus on those things that maybe people have been uninformed about,
Yeah.
right?
So maybe we just need to ask, like, if they already have that data, maybe we just need to start asking for it.
Well, I do think that
you're right.
as
Yeah.
both an immediate and a strategy is going to be really important for you. That definitely showed up in some of my notes, is this concept of awareness and advocacy and how those two things overlap. If you want to do the advocacy piece, number one, you have to have people aware of who you are, what you do, what your role in the community is. But then that advocacy piece, you've got to have information. It's
Yep.
one thing to walk around and be the town crier and be like, the library's great and you got to go and there's something for everyone. And then there's a whole other thing to be able to say, the library is invested in this much and this is what the community gets out of it. And I know that Carrie, you get this, board members have probably seen some of these pieces where you're looking at an annual report that says 5,000 people attended a program this year. There's no context. It's just this number versus 5,000 people attended a program this year and that's twice as many as last year, or it's 10% less than last year. What has happened? And so that contextualizing is what helps you with that advocacy piece. And I think that's going to be very important for you, whether or not you're able to secure more funding, whether or not it gives you the audience you want with your municipality. It's the thing you're going to need to raise money, to friend raise, to boost your foundation, and of course to have those then ambassadors and advocates in your community as well. It's kind of like you gotta be one and then you gotta get one. So the more people that can get one, think of how many people then are coming through your doors. Before we get too deep into any one particular topic, does anyone else have takeaways?
When people talked about the space, I thought it was very interesting because they were expressing the need for certain types of space. And it appears to be an opportunity to assess the space that is here and determine how it could be shifted around based on current needs and the needs that people are requesting in these conversations. And maybe there's some areas that aren't that popular anymore. People reserving movies or the space for used books, and maybe that could all be shifted as time goes on to provide the space that people are asking for
I know-
with meeting rooms.
Jennifer has mentioned that there is some space that could work for added meeting rooms. So that might be something that you should consider and talk to her about for in the plan, because obviously that will cost money. And then a lot of people definitely in both sessions, and I don't know about the first session, but lots of people mentioned the cafe. Adding coffee.
We have
More of
coffee.
I know, and we brought that up, that they want more of a cafe style, because apparently it was
That's-
originally promised.
It was.
Well, and
They've got-
here,
I would be here
The
every
seniors
week.
Yeah.
center over at City Hall, fix that up. They go there for lunch and doing other stuff already anyway.
and this would be my question for you as a person who has seen every single community I've ever worked with who wants this. Very few communities really truly can deliver it because it is expensive. It is an expense. It's a capital expense. So just fixing up a space, right? That is funding, because to have a functioning coffee shop, there are things that are health code necessary.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know, like, we can,
And
we
I
have a hard
and,
enough time with the staff, like, keeping,
and I want to throw it out there as this is a prime area where I would warn us against straying too far from the library's mission. And we can see how social connection fits really neatly in our mission. but is running a coffee shop in our mission, is providing refreshments to the community part of our mission, not necessarily.
I can tell you, my sister raised her 2 kids here, and they practically lived here at the library. And the question came up about this having a little coffee shop or a place where you can buy snacks and whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, when I bring my kids to the library, I do not want them asking for snacks or candy or sodas or that stuff.
Yeah.
We're at the library for a different purpose. So I thought that was an interesting, granted,
Yeah.
having a cup of coffee with your newspaper, that's one thing.
Right.
You can
But
have that
having.
And so my suggestion underlying this is coffee shop I will tell you, coffee shop is not going to be in your strategic plan. I'm going to save you from yourselves, and I'm not going to put it in your strategic
Perfect.
plan.
I would agree. It's
I'd
probably
like-
noisy.
Well, who's
And
going
you
to
need
staff
personnel.
a coffee shop?
Well, that's the one thing
And
when
where
I
do the
thought about
supplies
it.
come from? Who buys it? Is
Right.
it? Do you have a third party vendor that then now the library is managing a tenant?
Starbucks.
Well, that's what I realized.
So
When
I
I
think-
started to really think about it, I'm like, I don't even know how would that work? Like,
Yeah, but the
because this is
kernel-
also, the building is really owned by the city, and then how would, it
No.
sounds very messy.
Right. The kernel of the idea, though, is that people want opportunities that are unstructured to hang out. So if this were a different building, I want you to imagine this wall blown out, and this is kind of like the accordion doors or a garage door or something like that. And again, I'm not necessarily suggesting a capital improvement, but imagine this was truly flexible space that when not reserved, people could grab their cup of coffee and sit in here and jibber jabber till the cows came home or until 11 o'clock when the children's program starts. So the kernel of the idea within this is, do you think that there's maybe some unprogrammed programs that could happen, that maybe there's one Friday a month where coffee is provided and this is the social space, or maybe thinking about how do unprogrammed spaces, how can someone just sort of bop in and be like, hey, Joe and I want to sit here and chat, can we go into this room? And I'm sure that's always true.
There's no rooms to go into.
But my point is like, maybe there's the kernel of the idea is not so much in the strategic plan, but it's a thought process amongst you and the staff to think about, okay, people really seem to desire this. We don't have the capacity to run a coffee shop, and we don't have the capacity to have spaces open all the time. But what if there were ways to sort of engage with this on some kind of regularized, like I said, last Friday of the month or something like that. That's more a kernel for you all to take as feedback of, here's what people want. We cannot deliver exactly what they want, nor is it our mission to do so. But how do we incorporate this feeling they want to have when they come here?
Like maybe even a coffee cart out on the patio so that people go out of the patio in the summer. Or a coffee cart on wheels in here where they can talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that could be something that you all brainstorm and what's a good way to execute that feeling they want to have. It could also be that opportunity for, say, a future partner, someday down the line, 2-3 years from now, you're looking for like, man, what could the library really use? Well, people really want refreshments. Anybody who can provide refreshments is going to have an immediate audience with our patrons. So you already know you have something patrons desire. If you find a match out in the community, you can bring that in then and make them delighted by the free lemonade on the patio or the coffee that's happening. So you can match desires to some other donor or funder or sponsor who might come along sometime in the future.
There was something else that was brought up during the board meeting yesterday, and I don't know if you're aware of this. Jennifer was thinking, there are constituents within the city who weren't represented in the community conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
when you look at our elementary schools where you have, umpty-ump different countries of the world represented, they weren't represented here.
Right, that's what we were,
And so,
I didn't say that specifically, but that's what I was going, that was.
Yeah.
right,
Where I was
right.
trying to lead to,
Now,
not
some things that
put-
have been done already is that we have added other language books for those communities that are represented in the community in our library users and may not be really strong in English, and I would love to have a book in my native language.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what else do those people have to share about something that we don't know about, that's a cultural thing?
Yeah.
Or whatever it might be, that would influence our decisions on how we do things going forward, especially
Yeah.
from an outreach standpoint.
And you're coming to a point that I will ask you, but I think I know the answer you're going to give me. There were 34 people that attended. Do you feel like the 34 people represented everybody you would typically see at the
Oh,
library?
yeah.
Right, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So that is a big question sort of looming for us as well as for Jennifer. And obviously she's not here tonight, so these questions will get to her via me. But what level of effort must we, should we, can we put in to reach those audiences or representatives of those audiences? Oftentimes what I recommend to library directors in that situation, especially when there could be a cultural or a language barrier, is who are the people that serve those communities and how can they help connect you or speak on that community's behalf. So maybe there's a leader in their community or another agency that supports that community that could help steer that conversation. And that could happen with Jennifer, that could happen with me, that could happen in tandem with board members. And so those type of one-on-ones can be really important to say, okay, we know we didn't reach a lot of parents of young children, right? I think that's probably an audience that was definitely missing from our conversations. There were a handful of people that spoke well on their behalf, but we were definitely missing that audience. So I'll have a couple of suggestions for Jennifer that might be, can we talk to a group for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes after a program? And that could be Jennifer and I in tandem or Jennifer. Are there some people that we could recruit and say, hey, I'd really love to interview one of you. You know, there weren't a lot of parents of young kids at our community conversation. Does anybody have 30 minutes to sit down with me? We'll schedule it. You know, do you want to do a one-on-one phone call or a chat with me and do those one-on-one interviews? There are other ways that we can do more passive feedback. You know, we can do the easels or polls or exit surveys as parents of young children are sort of leaving the library. So they might have their own maybe 4 or 5 question survey that's different from the community survey. But that is a huge question right now is, do we think we got enough out of those community surveys? And who are we missing and how do we reach them? Is it important that we reach them? Or can we draw conclusions another way?
Yeah. One of the other things that the library has done is we've become a really strong partner with the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Making sure kids read with summer reading programs, all the different types of things like that. While we hear from the superintendent about, okay, we've got, you know, we upped the number of kids that are digital readers and stuff like that, we really don't know how are those individuals outside of the curriculum served by the school district, and is there a gap where nobody's taking care of them in these things?
They don't have a reading curriculum in Franklin.
We have a new one that is being adopted for the coming school year, which is
Okay.
one of the DPI-approved curriculums.
Okay.
To better meet the needs of the students to actually go back to teaching reading.
Oh, is this I'm going to be reductive
Yep.
here, but is it the phonics debate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
That could be a whole nother meeting.
yes.
That could be a whole, I
Yes.
mean, that could be a whole other series of meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I can confirm that several things within my notes, my rough notes, reflected that connection to the school district and the investment of some individuals spending some time on that. So I think that might be, it's both something that is good, so maybe not a strength, but like a growing strength, so a good thing, that also has the opportunity underlying it. If we're thinking about our SWOT model, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mm-hmm. That we've got some good things brewing and there's some growth and opportunity for more, knowing that a curriculum is changing and could be interesting. Let's just put it that way. It could be interesting. And that you have these partnerships with some educators, a partnership with the school district that has opportunities for growth where both parties can benefit and support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that the things that we know is that the library's doing, because it was just repeated over and over, that the library's doing things that the community wants all around, and they're doing it very well.
And people feel satisfied.
Right.
I really think that's something we do not have to ask in our survey at all. We do not need to understand if the community's satisfied or not. I think they are.
Right. So, we definitely, I mean, everybody's gonna say they want more programs, everybody's gonna say they're happy with their programs, but they would like more of programs we have, or.
Right, more dates, more times, more space.
Right, so I don't even see a point in asking any of that stuff in a survey, because we know all that stuff. Like, I don't even really see a point in putting the survey out, to be completely honest, but I know that we've been promising that, so.
Well, and I think there are things we can ask. I think the great news for you is we don't have to do a lot of digging. We don't have to ask 20 questions. We don't
Yeah.
have to have a complex survey in which
Right.
if you answer yes here, you start to choose your own adventure over here because you know, you've been to the library once in the last 6 months, so you get these questions, and once in the last year, so you get these questions. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I think we've got to have maybe 4, 5, 6 really powerful questions that we want to hear from the committee or from the community. But that we really have to tease out in what we've learned so far and what we know. I mean, this is really the benefit of having a very engaged committee, is you all know a lot of things, and while you're not necessarily the only voices in your community, you have pretty strong voices within your community.
Well, and I think our staff knows our patrons really well too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because our staff is so well loved, I think our patrons do talk to our staff very regularly and very friendly. You know, I think like above just a normal patron librarian thing, you know, like they
Yeah.
talk about how they talk about more than just library things with the staff too. So
Yes.
I think they have a very good read on our patrons and how they're feeling about things and stuff too.
You know, in the
So-
first meeting that we had all sorts of information about the community, demographics and stuff like that. Is there anything there that kind of begs to something that we need to know about? Who's here, like from a trend standpoint, like this is growing. So while we know a lot about people that we know, there's a lot of people that we don't know, and they're growing.
Yep.
And we need to learn more about them
Yes.
and who can teach us.
Tell me more.
Right, who are the key people
Yeah.
up there? Neighbors next door, families are from India,
Yep.
okay?
Yes, different cultures, Hispanic
Right,
population
right.
is
So,
growing.
I mean, I think for the most part, we're not talking about helping people find jobs or things like that, but are there things where we can become more of an information center, either pointing people towards things proactively, or even saying, this is a service that we need to start to provide on a regular basis, and somebody on staff or a volunteer community or whoever, we need to have them kind of help us with.
We have 3 food pantries in Franklin that serve Franklin residents that I think would probably really help get you connected with a population that their voice often isn't heard.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful.
And they serve people from the cradle all the way to like
Yeah.
older adults.
I think also with the different people that come in, we should also look at the library itself. With people that English is a second language or they're learning English, even like the gentleman that came in on Thursday, that he came in to practice his English skills. When he walks into the library, you know, does he have difficulty? Because like we had talked in one of our breakout sessions, everything's in English, like, is that something that we need to maybe address, or at least in one spot? Is there something, I guess we just need to
Or you
maybe
change from words to
brainstorm.
pictures, so it's a little bit easier to,
Yeah,
things like that.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, good question is, what are we missing? And if you send the survey out to this broader audience of people who may not come to the library because we're missing something here,
Mhm.
it might be very informative to learn from others who are not coming to the library.
Yeah, so how do we make sure that question is detailed enough to get the information we want, though?
And that can be the challenge between your survey has one function and these sort of quasi-community conversations have another function. So this idea of the food pantries, which actually I really like as a potential spot to do sort of on the ground, you know, we have 3 questions for you about the library. Do you have 5 minutes to spend with us? So not a true interview, not quite a survey, but something sort of in between, and say, do you have a library card? If, you know, someone could assist you with setting that up, would you be interested in it? You know, what is your perception of the library? Is there something in the library you'd like to have at the library that you don't think is there? And have, you know, a 5-minute conversation with maybe 5 to 10 people would be willing to talk to us, because most people probably just want to come and do their thing and be left alone,
I'm probably
right?
doing a Narcan training in a few of them next month, so I could.
Okay, ooh, all right, that's good to know. So that's one opportunity. The challenge that we're gonna have with our survey is gonna be just like our community conversations. It's gonna go to all the people that you already have. And so I'm not dissuading us from a survey, but that's where I'm saying our survey really has to tell us something special or reach somebody that isn't the same people that we brought to our community conversations in order to really be effective. So I know this feels like we're kind of spinning our wheels in the mud at the moment, but we really, this I think is a really tough challenge, because we do know a lot and the staff knows a lot. That I think what we're getting at is maybe our efforts are best spent on finding these hidden audiences or these quiet audiences, and maybe there, because we did promise a survey, so I don't want to back away from that idea, but maybe the weight of the survey is something a little gentler. Like I said, the couple of questions that are really powerful ones that we want to hear from the community, but not this deep, detailed thing. And then our effort is spent on reaching these unique populations, these unique subgroups in your community that are really tough to kind of just send an email to and hope to hear back.
Well, and can we make the survey in different languages besides just English? I don't think we've ever done that before.
Yeah.
Can we
We
have
should be
it
able to do it
translated?
with, if we did it with Google, we should be able to just translate it, because
How
Google
good, do we know
Translator.
how good the translation is from Google?
Who knows?
It's fairly decent.
Or is there someone in the community that could translate
Be
it?
or at least be sort of a beta tester of it,
Of
to
the
take a look.
translated version.
Yeah, and take a look and say, is this perfect?
Yeah.
No.
She
Is it workable?
Yeah.
Is it?
She speaks
Yes.
Yeah.
Punjabi.
Maybe some
I'm not
volunteers
sure
who speak
if she
Yeah.
the
reads
language.
English.
Yeah.
Okay.
She speaks it at home.
Many languages.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
Her
Maybe
parents
the top
could
languages.
probably, sure.
What's her
Spanish.
name?
Zyra.
Zyra?
Yeah.
Didn't she say she also speaks Arabic?
Yeah.
She does. So
Mhm.
her mom
Arabic.
could definitely reads and writes that.
And
could
you said
probably-
Punjabi?
I think so. Um,
Okay, so
I'm sure
we'll
we
try
can
it out
find
on.
someone who could look at the Spanish translation.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that should be
That's
fairly
easy.
easy.
Yes, that should be, that's a
Um,
definite.
But like,
Arabic, Punjabi.
I don't know, like
Connecting with the Sikh
Urdu
temple
or,
in Oak Creek,
Oh,
yeah,
I think would be really a good idea.
even though they're in Oak Creek.
Even though there's so many people that are from Franklin.
Franklin, I'm
Okay.
sure,
The
yeah,
temple.
because we don't have one in
Right.
Franklin, so.
And
yeah.
Or
the-
anywhere else.
I think was it the Muslim American
Mm.
group is moving in the old movie theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think if
The,
we maybe.
the which group did you say?
It's the Muslim American
It's the
Society.
Islamic Society.
Yes, there we go.
Islamic,
I
yeah.
think they
They have
purchased
purchased
the movie
that.
theater, so maybe we kind
That's
of
an
reach out
audience.
to their
Mhm.
organization, say, welcome to the community, we're looking to increase
Mhm.
Like
services.
the Islamic Society of Milwaukee,
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm. They're currently on, what is it?
they're on
Layton?
13th and
Yeah,
Lake.
Yes,
13th.
and they,
Are they getting rid of their buildings?
No.
over
I would be
there? They're
surprised
just
because they've got a
expanding.
school there.
Yeah, they have Salon
Yeah.
School over
Yeah.
there.
So maybe they're just expanding.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. The first thing I heard was that it was going to be a school, but I'm not sure that that's specifically what they're doing with that building,
Okay.
with that space.
Cause Salon School is pretty big,
Uh-huh.
but there are a
Yeah.
lot of kids in
It'd be
Franklin
good to find out
that
if it's
go
gonna
to
be
Salon
adult
School.
education,
Right, yeah.
you know,
we're not
that type
sure
of thing.
yet.
Yeah,
But
they
this-
have, yeah.
This highlights how many different audiences there are in our community, and the survey could be targeted specifically to the audiences. It could be customized.
I would caution against that,
Somewhat.
and one for my own self-preservation. I am not a data scientist, and that is clear in the contract that I share with Jennifer. And so I really, and I say this not to shoot down that idea, but if that is something you want to pursue, you will want a survey company to do that. What I am able to do is gauging community ideas, opinions, and what you're talking about is something that would have to be created with particular audiences in mind, which is not an area of
How-
expertise for me.
So, my question is, unless it's multiple choice, how do we read the surveys when they come back?
It would have to be something that would be
Yeah.
a lot clearer, and then
Rate from 1 to 5, like,
and then if we did free text, we would probably have to limit free text so that we would have the benefit of the translation
Yeah.
software, or we would have to pay for a translator.
yeah,
Um,
so that's another thing to
Yeah.
consider when we're talking about,
Right. And what if we're doing paper too? And
yeah.
we don't have,
Mhm.
like, you know, if they're writing out an answer, then we don't have that.
The ability to copy and paste into a translator or have something to scan it into
So
a
then we would definitely
translator.
have to have somebody who could read that for us.
Yep,
But,
So this needs to be more broad.
That is typically how these work.
well, I mean, I think, like, have you attended the Franklin Library? Yes, sir. I mean, some of it could be pretty broad.
Some of it can be. In the end, what we're looking for is people's both concrete thoughts and experiences, and a way to capture their preferences or ideas. I really, in my experience in all of this, free text is really difficult. It's really difficult because people don't always understand the intent of the question. They air grievances in questions. They respond in essay form.
Let me
so
tell you
it-
my story.
So it's really challenging. So let me give an example. I want to go back to the interesting thing we talked about with the library's budget, with the tax bill, excuse me. So what if we posed a question to the community about, piece of education? Do you understand that the library is funded through the city's municipal budget? It is one of, X number of departments. What ways would help you understand the library's funds and your return on investment? A tax bill, something on my receipt, infographic, a flyer, a mailer, a la 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 la. So we're getting at the heart of something we do want to understand,
That's good.
and we're asking them about something that we would want to have maybe a potential strategy towards. It would give us an eye on how we would work on that advocacy, but it's not a typical survey question.
It's a good idea.
It's
But it would also
really
give us the power to City Hall to be like, look, we, out of this number that we
Right.
surveyed,
right. Now that's
100% from our survey want that your, 90% of our, those
and that
surveyed.
survey question helps you nothing with your non-English speaking.
Right.
It helps you nothing with the audiences that you have not captured. So this is where I think we're talking about a two-pronged approach, that
Right.
these untapped audiences need a strategy, and our survey needs to have some big ideas in it, and not just, are you satisfied, what do you like?
Well,
So
and I
that's
think
the
you brought it
building
up
a
already,
scale
you
of
know,
1 to
there needs
5.
to be a small community conversation with a group. If you can get a group together, or you're doing the one-on-ones,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to be personal. It's
Yeah.
not
I think so.
likely to be face-to-face.
And especially if there's some translation needed, though, it will have to be in smaller groups.
Well, if you can find that one community champion to help represent that group.
Agreed.
That might just
Like a
be,
key informant interview
Yeah.
would be best.
Yes.
yeah.
Ooh, I like that
I
language.
agree.
Key informant. I'm
Ooh,
typing
mhm.
that out right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the key. So what kind of timeline do we want to try to be on with the survey here?
That's a great question, and hard to answer with Jennifer not in the room.
Okay.
Part of the reason why we start.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah.
You can just leave it at that.
Well, I want to be clear that part of the reason we start that strategic planning so early in the year is the thought that we will wrap it by your budget season, so that if there are budget implications in your strategic plan for that year one,
We're
that you're
already in budget season.
right. I hear you, but that approval
Yeah.
piece, right? Especially if there's something really key. Now, Jennifer may say there's nothing really key that's going to be a funding issue in this strategic plan. I don't know if that's true or not.
Not for next year, but definitely long-term if we're
I would
talking
see.
about space considerations and things
Or some
like
studies or some
Right.
examinations. that-
Yeah, because people also, a lot of people brought up the patio, the infrastructure of the patio, which is also we've like tabled, right? We got it temporarily fixed, but
So my abstract answer is, I'm here until we complete the project, and we can't write a strategic plan without good information.
Right.
So I'm invested in doing the effort towards really good information
Right.
with the help and support of you all and
I guess
Jennifer
I was
and
more
her staff.
so going like, should we try to get the common general questions sort of loosely picked out tonight?
Well,
or-
and we're kind of going in two directions too,
Right.
in which we would need to understand the audiences that we might get to meet to understand the questions we might ask them.
Right, that's
And the
definitely-
survey is going to be something different. So to your point, yeah, we can workshop some questions this evening. That's my hope, actually. It's
Okay.
it's at least on my agenda to try to workshop some of those questions.
Because we could at least start to move forward with that. Because I just think like we only meet once a month. So,
Yes.
it gets farther out.
For sure. And the most obvious answer to your strategic plan is it's intended to start in 2025. So we got to wrap it before 2025
Right.
starts if we're really going to be on task. No, that's loosey-goosey, right? I've
Right.
had clients where we wrap a strategic plan. It's supposed to start next year, and they're just like ready to go. So they start it the year before, and they start,
We have Mike on our committee.
A+.
It will be done.
A+ students who want to get
Now, one of the other
extra
things
credit.
too, when we're talking about the strategic plan, is that out of the strategic plan, we develop objectives. And that's how Jennifer is evaluated, so as close to,
Do that. We start
January-ish,
Right.
That we can have
Yeah.
that, so, the end of the month, January meeting for the library board, then we go, okay,
Yeah.
here's what it's gonna look like, even if it's just,
January,
even if it's just like Q1.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But right, you all are smart enough to know that if you haven't written a goal, it's pretty hard to have an objective underneath.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there are some things we want to get moving on. Now, that doesn't mean that the takeaways from the community conversations and the takeaways that we've already had in our committee aren't already being, that's part of what I do. I do a debrief
right.
and draft of the emerging themes from the community conversations. There'll be a debrief and draft after any one-on-one interviews or the survey. So all of those, it doesn't mean that the work on my end is hung up completely if we have some things that we're accomplishing between now and July. Those would be layers then that would come in, or things that this fully supports this idea we've already formulated and now we've got a few more, or this completely contradicts an idea we had. Let's evaluate and discuss why these things are at odds with one another. So in sort of the SWOT analysis, I think one thing that I just want to make sure that I talk about is one of the things that I perceived as a threat for your community that also, on the flip side, has a really nice opportunity is this concept of a diminishing community appetite for tax bills or increased tax bills, and sort of a tepid response to how do you support your community financially through your time, talent, and treasure. I was actually quite honestly surprised with
Can you say
how...
that one more time?
So a very tepid or lukewarm response to time, talent, and treasure, which tells me that people don't want to donate, they don't want to volunteer,
Yeah.
and they don't really want to give anything else.
It was like a tongue twister. I just wanted to see
Yeah.
if you could say it one more
A tepid time, talent, and treasure. Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. I was up at 5 a.m. today, so I'm also impressed. I never get up that early.
And in a house that's like almost gotta be 100 degrees.
I woke up in Boscobel this morning, so I just made my
geez,
way.
and
Yeah.
a two-hour drive.
I went to Boscobel, I went to Oshkosh, and now I'm here.
Wow.
So I'm on fire.
And caffeine.
I'm going straight to bed. But that is something that's kind of alarming.
Yeah.
Because that means that if you really needed investment, there'd be a real big push to kind of nudge people in your community to step up and speak on your behalf. If you were doing a really big fundraising project, let's say before the end of the year, do you think you'd have a lot of community energy?
No.
Probably not.
No. One of the most shocking things that has, I shouldn't say shocking, it wasn't shocking that it happened, it was just like reaffirming, eye-opening, was we were talking about the patrons here versus patrons in Lake Milwaukee. And when the patrons in Milwaukee have fines and some of them are, you know that they're more so struggling. They're families that don't have very much of an income. And you tell them, you have a $2 fine. And they pull out their wallets and they pay their $2 fine and they apologize for turning in their books late. But here, you're more likely to have somebody mad and angry that they have a $2 fine.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as a person who supervised hundreds of fine forgiveness, or I should say fine, what did we call them at MPL? I was the final stamp on fine. It wasn't quite fine forgiveness, but fine programs to basically appeal your fine. People in Milwaukee fight all the time over $5, $10, whatever. But your point is valid in that people really get hung up on small amounts that are, in many ways, inconsequential. For most families, $2 is something that can be managed, even if it's not managed in the moment. We can find a way to get there. I think it was really surprising to me, in a similar vein, that people were very willing to $100 to go get this library card over here, and I go to this library, go to this library, go to this library, and maximize all of this, when there's nothing wrong with that. It's certainly all within the rules. But again, just this idea of sort of being lukewarm about, well, you don't have what I want, so I'm just going to go where I can get what I want, or I'm going to twist the arm of someone to get what I want, kind of feeling. And I think that
Also $100 to another library to get the Explorer passes, but you don't just go get the pass to the place. when it's
right, I would
probably
just buy the
$100.
membership.
I know.
I would just buy the membership.
Oh,
But
did somebody say that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they bought library cards at other
Yeah.
libraries to use the Explorer passes, yet
Didn't
they
buy
didn't
the
just go buy the
right, I mean
membership.
that's like two Zoo memberships right there.
Oh my God.
I'm glad I was sitting where I was because she didn't see my jaw drop. Really?
Wow.
But I think this goes to, there's a real opportunity in your strategies to get to a place where you've got people who are regularly able to call or write their alders, people who are willing to donate to your foundation, donate to fundraisers, people who are willing to step up and maybe volunteer in a capacity that makes sense for the library. I think people think of library volunteers as people who putter around this building, and I think that has to change, and I think that's a challenge for all libraries is what if your library volunteers are the people who walk in the 4th of July parade and wear a cool t-shirt and hand out candy? What if the people who are, your library volunteers take a book sale truck to a senior center or whatever? What if they're the people out in the community representing the library
Do we
while the
have
library is
volunteers?
here?
We do.
Sometimes
yeah,
I'm like,
for
should
sure.
we have volunteers?
When you walked in
They're
the
always
front-
working
Yeah,
so
like-
hard.
Well, when you walked in the front door and you see those big planters, it's like, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that volunteers?
Somebody had to plant those.
Those
Yeah.
planters? Jennifer did that.
Why?
Because nobody else will do it, Mike.
Come on.
Yeah.
Nobody?
I was gonna say, I did see people.
The teens did the tulips.
Yeah.
They got community service hours
did.
for it.
Yeah.
Our shelvers planted the perennials.
Yeah.
I plant the vegetables. Jennifer plants the. We can't even get DPW to mow our grass on like a regular schedule. Actually, they're doing good this year, but like in the past.
That's
like,
why you
Oh,
plant
I
prairie
did
and
find-
wildflowers.
A lot
You
of
don't have to
people
worry.
did
Right,
say
let
they
it go.
didn't know about the foundation.
Why, I wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised.
so we did have a lot of comments and suggestions for the foundation.
Yeah, which again, I think there are strategies and then there are some takeaways because awareness is
Yeah.
something we're all parts of the library are, I don't want to say struggling with, but like it's just a challenge. It's just a
Right,
challenge to make
right.
everybody aware of all the things we have.
And I'd like to just mention about the foundation, when you're talking about volunteers, yes, every member of the foundation board volunteers for every one of our fundraisers.
Mhm, yeah.
And
That's
beyond that,
amazing.
there's some
Yeah.
others,
Yeah.
certainly beyond the board as well.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
we are volunteers.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's
I didn't mean you guys. I meant like other people because everybody works so hard. I think that it's like, I
And
guess I know better that they're not
We
all
have a good
employees,
core
but-
volunteer group
Yeah.
that comes in the mornings to help with bins and put away DVDs. There's usually 1 to 2 people every day.
Mhm.
I don't know about Mondays because I work Monday nights, but I'm sure there's somebody on Mondays.
Everybody's always working though.
And
You
then-
don't really see like meandering.
No.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and then the kids department now probably only has, I think they have 3 regular volunteers. That's it.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the end of volunteering.
But they have duties that theoretically a staff member could do if you had.
These are
People
all
to do it.
Yeah, so these
Yeah.
are all duties that are helping us because we
Yes.
don't have enough staff.
Right.
Of course,
Yep.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. Because that too tells me
That we need more staff.
that some staff could be
Yeah.
welcome. And again, there's nothing wrong, there's no judgment in doing it. But then what if those people were mobilized in a different way that benefited the library visibly? And some people like those tasks. Some people, they want to volunteer at the library and do things that are library related because that is meaningful to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big network.
Okay. So,
Usually when you do a survey, I like the surveys where it's not just questions, where there's some information about the thing you're going to ask me a question about. So if we're talking about how would you like to get the information about, you know, you're part of the library or stuff like that, do we provide information up front, you know, kind of like get their brain thinking on that particular thing, and then we ask them the question about that thing. So there's always a little bit of something to read. It doesn't have to be really
Yeah.
long, but just something like, you know, and be a little bit marketing too. And you know, in order to keep the library services free to you, comma, you know, the city supplies X number of dollars, and we have the foundation that also is like, okay, how would you like to know about? So just as an example.
mhm. And I have both seen this in surveys and I have crafted questions like that.
Where it's helpful.
Where there's something that's like, it's one of those where you give people like, you're assuming you're being gentle about like, you probably already know that the library has an incredible foundation that does da 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 da, but you're framing it as like, and if you didn't know, now we've served up the answer to you and you might come away having learned something. The challenge is if you do too many, then people are like, you know, am I reading a PSA or they feel like they have to do too much homework if they. So I think 1 or 2 of those is a really good idea, especially about things you really want your community to understand, or that are complex. So like if we do ask a question about the budget and understanding that return on investment, we'll want to frame that well so that we're not just asking them something that they have zero context for.
Yeah, and there's some future benefit to things like that too, because then you've also informed folks about what your current situation is, so when you come back later on to talk about the library, then they at least have some recollection of having had, you know, that type of thing already.
I would think most people do not know how a library works. How is it funded? Where does the money come from?
I would agree
What
with
does the
that.
foundation do?
Yeah.
What is a foundation?
Yeah, I mean, for any of you who were at the sessions, they asked a lot of questions, which was one of my big takeaways is the people who came were genuinely interested in knowing stuff. They asked a lot of follow-up questions. They asked questions of each other. And that tells me at least the audience that you have secured really, really well. And they would love more information. How we deliver that, of course, is wildly different based on all of their preferences. But so that makes me wonder then if there is a question of some kind around their ideas, thoughts, opinions about volunteering or giving back to the library, and what that might look like, you know. And again, we could sort of see what options they like. You know, we could do that as a ranked choice answer, you know, rank these opportunities to give back to the library. What seems appealing to you? We're not taking anyone's information, so we're not holding them to
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what seems appealing? You know, book sales, what seems appealing? Tip jars, what seems appealing? And kind of go through a variety of ways that they could give back to the library. And we could even be cheeky about it and be like, don't worry, we're not signing you up for anything. We just want to know what you like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could have a sense of humor.
That might be good, because I think a lot of people don't even ever consider giving money to the library. Like, it's
Yeah.
not something that, so having a question about giving money to the library just will make it go in their brains. Not that they'll ever do it, but it'll make it enter there. So then maybe the next time they see a jar or a request for money, maybe, usually it takes at least 3 times, but so maybe 3 times later, they will, and they happen to have $1 in their pocket, maybe they'll throw it in the jar.
Mm-hmm. And that too, going back to Mike's idea, could also be an educational piece. And I wouldn't frame it this bluntly because we wouldn't want to upset anyone, but like, city funding doesn't cover all the things the library wants and needs. The foundation and donors help cover these other costs, like paying for presenters, the patio furniture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing that the foundation helps with these things, what ways appeal to you to help support the foundation? And then we could go down the list with some
Set the
options.
stage. The foundation does send out a letter near the end of the year with my signature and Jennifer's, talking about the things that the foundation has done and asking for contributions. And we do, I can't tell you exactly how much, but we have brought in.
Yeah, brings in.
Does that go to the community? Does it go to the library mailing list? How does
It's
it?
a mailing list that has been accumulating over time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
not exactly sure how it all has come to be, but often it's people who have contributed in the past, and of course we're asking again. But then, you know, some additional names keep being added on.
I don't think this is a wrong thing to bring up, but because the foundation does support the library, we're talking about strategic planning for the library. One of the things that we did at our church to try to gain awareness was we said, okay, we're going to send just a general mailing, letting folks know where we are, because we happen to be in a place that we're not on a main drag, right? So you have to want to know to get there in order to get there. And it's like all the households that are new to Franklin in the last 2 years. So maybe we have something like that where we communicate out to what are all the new households in Franklin in the last 2 years, kind of informing them about the library.
We can run the list with reference solutions. And do our best reference librarian
I
impressions.
feel like that was something Jennifer was working on.
Okay.
Okay.
Which somebody, I don't remember which session it was, probably the last one, but those people brought up some concerns about, or somebody at some point brought up some concerns about how far away some of those newer subdivisions are in comparison to the library.
Yeah.
And so that would cover that, because those subdivisions are newer.
Are they closer to another library?
That was one of the things that we talked about, but they're not, because they're pretty much just like south down 76th Street. Unless there's a closer, no, because I don't think.
All the
I've
stuff
seen-
across from the rock, all the rental property there, that's all brand new. So
Oh,
we're not
yeah,
just,
I'll
we're
go,
not
I'll
just,
go.
we're talking households, not necessarily homes.
Right.
Right, so
Yeah.
anybody who's new to the area, right, we get something,
I
so.
think they were concerned about would they know what's going on at the library? So, the ones that were further away at least. So that would reach them.
Well, and that could be an interesting, being very granular. We had that one woman, I think in the first session, who is on her HOA board, and she grabs stuff and puts it in a packet for a new mover to welcome them. Like, what if there was a welcome wagon that was part of your volunteer corps that is sort of like pulling together these packets to mail to new movers, or save postage and just like drop off for new movers or whatever. That could be an opportunity if you're looking at especially areas that have that growth, whether that's for library information or library and foundation information,
Or hitting up like realtors.
Right,
that say,
right,
will you
as
be
partners.
will you be our, ambassadors, and say, when you sell houses here in Franklin.
So I've kind of got it in my parking lot for today's conversation to ask Jennifer about. That is there an effort, and two, this is also something to potentially kick to McFliss. McFliss has a marketing person. They run data like this fairly frequently. It benefits all their members if they run new mover list and say, there's a McFliss library in your area, because of course there is, wherever you move in our county. That could be an effort that could flip to them. And then it's not your budget of postage, or it's not your, you don't have every single library doing a
So it's done
replication of effort.
on the part of the system as opposed
Correct,
to
as a
our
system
library.
service,
It's
yeah.
funny because we always get off on this tangent, but we don't have a problem getting people into our library. So why do we always get after this? All of our programs are full. That's not our problem.
Well, and I can say as your consultant, you are a really successful library.
Right. I mean, we want to stay this way.
Yeah,
That's our,
yeah,
how do
yeah.
we sustain where we are and continue with our growth, right? Like, we're always still going to grow. The community is expected to grow. So how do we stay there? That's what we need to focus on.
Right.
Is,
Yeah, how to manage the growth. Right now, you would need more staff, more funding.
right.
So if you're bringing more people in and you're growing,
Right. Our focus doesn't need to necessarily be on how do we capture so many more coming in. It needs to be how do we continue to sustain what we're already doing as those people are already coming in. Because we're already doing the things to bring everybody in. I mean, it'll always be reaching out to the community, but we're already doing that too. We're already bringing those people in.
And this is where you want even though a library serves everyone, right? So think of it as that 360 view, right? Everyone in your community can benefit from the library. There is something at the library for probably just about everybody in your community. It's one of the reasons we start with some of that demographics is you will not be able to serve everyone.
Right.
Everyone won't come through your doors.
Right.
So who are the most likely to sort of you're not putting your blinders on, but you're sort of targeting your vision, okay? So that you've got these core audiences. And in a way, that's what the overlap of the demographics, the community listening sessions, the work with all of you is to help hone in on. We may not get it exactly right, and we want to make sure we've got flexibility in the strategic plan, so we don't say something like, we only want to serve adults ages 37 to 79 who are either parents or grandparents, and we don't want to be too narrow, right?
But wouldn't it be fun if you came through the hallway in the library and you heard a book club talking about a book and it wasn't in English?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
we still want to try to reach out and hear from everybody. Like, that's what this committee 100% should do.
And
Is
so you
hear
want
from
to,
everybody.
and you want to have that balance between high need, high use, and who lives here.
Yeah.
So all those things have to go into who our audiences are.
and identifying those audiences. Who's the primary audience? Who's the secondary audience? And determining how you serve each of those audiences, because you can't serve them all in the same way.
Mhm.
You don't have the resources to serve all of them in
Right.
the same way.
Right.
But I think as librarians, I think we're always also focusing on who we're not serving and how
Right.
we can serve them. So I
Right.
think
And I would put those in
has
that
to
high
be-
need category.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
think that needs to be part of the strategic plan.
Mhm.
Even though, yes, we are getting people through the door, we can get more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we can provide more
If we're going to
for
be
them.
equitable,
Correct, yes.
Right, so just
Because
because we
right
have
now
a
we're
lot of
getting the
people coming
same
through
kind
the
of
door, if
people.
it's not representative of
Yes.
the community, then we're
Yes.
not serving the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, that makes
And
sense.
I'll give you an example from my work. So I was always an adult services librarian. And so I would really have a chip
Always
on my
wanted to be a
shoulder
librarian.
during summer reading time. And
Dang those kids librarians.
And it's, I was real fun to be on committees with because I would have like I really was like, youth are being overserved. Like I can't get $100 for a Hollinger box. I can't get $100 to order 2 Hollinger boxes for the things that are going to go in the rare books room. But you're telling me that we can buy this, and this for summer reading, and every kid's going to get a book, and I can't get 2. And I said a bad word. I'm like, I can't get 2 boxes. It didn't go over very well. I did not get my boxes. Actually, I did eventually get them. They heard my point. But right, just because, and I'm gonna be a devil's advocate here, just because children and family come here doesn't mean they have everything. Just because older adults come here doesn't mean that they have everything.
Right.
So, we heard a lot in your programming about who's really enjoying it and who's coming and who's having a great time. I would go back to that mission and vision. Is that exactly how and who you want to serve with your finite programming hours, finite programming dollars, and finite programming spaces?
Yeah.
You may decide that we still program at the same level, but we only focus on these 3 or 4 topics, or we only focus on these 2 to 3 audiences. And so you tighten that window, and then you might find that you've got room for an international book club. Now you have room for English conversations. Now you have room for it because you're not doing some other thing that another agency could handle or doesn't tightly fit your mission.
English conversations with coffee.
Coffee. Yeah, all the people that want to jibber jabber could jibber jabber with somebody trying to learn English.
I like that. With coffee.
With coffee. And maybe treats.
We all
Yes, we were told with the seniors, then we'll have the seniors and maybe the teenagers, right? Well,
Gotta bring food.
Now, we all love kids.
Yes.
And however, there is a captive audience basically already in our schools.
Yes, yes.
And in our high schools. And hopefully they have libraries. So we also shouldn't be, or can't perhaps, duplicate the sort of things that they're finding there. So maybe this conversation also should include, someone from the school district in order to cooperate.
Yeah.
she
Okay.
is
Yeah.
the librarian for the school
Yeah.
district.
Yeah, and we do have a student that
Yeah,
is on the
Zaira.
committee as well.
She's in Pakistan right now. For a
So,
wedding.
yeah, so I mean, we're doing
Yeah.
wonderful things for that age group.
Yes, and my example from my own life is very flippant because I recognize, and the data shows, that if you capture a child early, they will be lifelong library, if not users, supporters.
Yes.
So I'm using my example as a comical one, but the idea that we do serve several parts of our population because we understand their needs are higher, and that youth audience is one that pays off for a long time if you capture them early enough. And again, going back to the fact that we really did not have a lot of parents of young children to tell us what's important to them, does leave an empty hole in kind of what we need to know about where we're headed with that particular audience.
I think they'll be pretty easy to pick up with the surveys, though. It's just
Yeah. I mean, I genuinely think with the
And
amount
some-
of programming that's happening this summer, I think we could capture the essence of a community conversation by bopping in to a handful of programs and saying, hey, if there's any parents that want to answer a few questions, I'm going to be here for 10 minutes. Please chat with me.
That's a great idea.
And I really
I'm
think
at
we'd
all-
get some good
I've
info.
got all of the programs.
Yeah.
with some childcare. The kids are wild.
I'll give them all espresso and cookies.
Oh, yes.
And
And
then,
then send them on their way.
I mean, I'm gone for the next 2 weeks, but
Yeah.
they're not open for one of them anyhow, so I miss only 1 week. And
okay. So I think, Carrie, I'll send that question to Jennifer. I can't imagine she would think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But we'll have to figure out what the timing of that would look like. Because again, that could be me, that could be
a group of us.
a group of us, it could be
I
the
could
youth
watch.
services.
I could watch some of the kids while you guys talk to some of the
Sure,
parents too,
sure,
or
sure.
whatever.
Yeah. I would be happy. I would be happy to to extend.
However she wants to do
Yeah,
some of it.
yeah. I think that would be really valuable and an easy way to do it. Okay. So I think we've actually gotten two good ideas for our survey questions that I'll keep workshopping. So we're talking about something around the budget. We're talking about a question that's around, what are appealing ways to give back to the library or to support the library. And I'm going to include kind of the time, talent, and treasure in that. So can you give time? Can you give money? Can you, is it donations of things? Is it being part of a fundraiser? I'll come up with some answers. And of course I won't move forward with any of this until you all have eyeballs on it.
What were some of the questions that we had picked out during those sessions that we did when we were looking at possible questions? I feel like we had a couple of good ones.
I do not have my file folder with me this evening. Let me pull up a document. Sorry, I gotta scroll really far in it. Okay.
While you're doing that, can I
Yeah.
just ask, are there other entities in the community besides the schools and the library who offer these kinds of programs for kids? Can you think of anything else?
I mean, the rec department
The rec department.
has a lot of programming.
Uh-huh. No, the theater, it does, but that's more
Yeah.
drama type.
Yeah,
things.
that's very
Yeah, but
specific,
Mhm.
which
yeah,
is.
and actually the rec works with a lot of the different theaters.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so some of the categories in the document that I had shared, I think it was maybe 2 meetings ago, that was kind of some samples about survey questions. Some of the categories that we could ask questions in relate to sort of social and emotional literacy. So like think of wellness, not fitness, but wellness, as well as kind of mental health categories, and the very popular social category that came up during our listening sessions. There are also questions that we could ask about particular resources. So not just are you satisfied with what the library has to offer, but specific resource questions. Again, I would leave that to you or to the staff about what they want to find out more about, but I recommend having very specific questions like about the digital collections, the youth and teen collections, the media collections. Are you still using DVDs? Yes or no, type of thing. So there could be that.
Yes, that would be something good for you guys to see. Have a conversation to see, is there something that you guys really would like to know from this survey while we're collecting?
Yeah. And then there are also categories in the very large and tricky bucket of technology. So we could ask questions that relate to in-house technology, which some of which is probably, I would not recommend asking this, but you can ask about, do you like the computers and laptops? Do you like the printer? Do you like the copy machine? Who loves a copy machine, quite honestly?
Hey, the teenagers.
Those teenagers
Oh, they
loved
do.
it.
That was a very
Yeah.
fascinating finding.
They come here to use it.
A copy machine?
Because they're not
Yes.
allowed to use it at school, so they have to come here to use ours. And then Jennifer
And they
was
said
like,
that they like coming here because it's one of the least expensive options.
Uh-huh.
It is, that's
Yeah.
true.
And then Jennifer was like, "Oh, that's why we've been getting more money from our copy machine."
What are they making copies of?
Just printing up stuff they need for
School.
school,
For school.
apparently.
Mhm.
Yeah. But then you can also ask the technology question in, should the library provide more technology? So do you want circulating technology?
Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't ask this question.
I was just saying, it's a question you can ask. Or do you want to go down the rabbit hole of a makerspace or tech that can be used for programming purposes? Space is kind of an issue in this building, so it may not be the right question that you want to ask, but I don't want to speak on behalf of what Jennifer and the staff want to know about. Meeting rooms also were a key point, that the community values that the meeting rooms are here. They are clearly heavily used both anecdotally and statistically. Is there something you want to know about the meeting rooms?
I think that's something we already know.
Yeah, you
And
have
it
a lot
was
of data.
It was already pretty confirmed, but that's something that we know just from actual data of them being
Mhm.
used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need more of them.
Yeah.
Were you gonna include like basic demographic questions at all? Like an age range or a
For
zip
me,
code?
in my experience, it varies from community to community, and oftentimes it depends on the questions we ask.
As to whether having that information is gonna add any value.
Right. So in the MICFLIS survey that I helped design for them, we needed demographic data to tell us which library they were telling us about, because we were surveying the whole county. So we definitely wanted sort of what they considered their home location. And then we also did age ranges, because it was intended to be a wide-ranging survey, that we wanted to understand if the results skewed towards one age range more so than another, and if it told us things about, does it tell us something about older adults versus teens? Does it tell us something about youth versus teens? And what we found was overwhelmingly it was older adults that took the survey. And I think it was even designated 55 plus was almost 50% of the survey respondents. So it told us a lot. We have really good data at
That's
MIFLIS
important to know.
about older adults,
Yeah.
but it sure didn't tell us a whole lot about adults 23 to, but it wouldn't, because they don't usually take surveys, so
Well,
it's,
sometimes I've done that to use like more targeted approaches on like, okay,
Yeah.
I know that we don't have anyone in their 20s taking it, so I'll put some QR codes at the bars.
sure.
And see if people will take it then.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a very good point.
So I don't know if you'd want to go that in depth
Mhm.
into the survey though.
Yeah, and you raise a good question of, already kind of the topics we've talked about a little bit are really skewing towards adult users.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So do you want something from your youth? And how many youth or young adults would you expect would take a survey regardless, no matter how it's promoted?
Well, we already know that they come here to study and do other things. They come here in order to print stuff out. Is there anything else that we should know?
Well, I mean, we already know how many attend programs, because all
Yeah,
that
but
stuff
it's
is
just
tracked.
telling them if they come here to hang out.
Yeah.
You know, we track how many people come through the door.
Right.
Well, we don't know anything about what the
they're doing here.
what the split is when they're
How
here.
do you
Now, one
use-
is,
Yeah.
and you know, maybe one of the questions that we asked is that, okay, what would be your ideal meeting space? It's like, would this meet your need? Like, we have those hives that we have, okay? Is that a place where if you had 3 or 4 of your friends, you'd feel comfortable sitting in and doing what you need to do?
I wonder if, well, I mean, if we knew that, or if we know, or if Laura and Carrie and just some of the librarians that are here, do they get used?
Yes, not necessarily. I don't think the hives get used as much by the teenagers. And that, I think the reason why is because there are people who come at 9 a.m. in the morning, they sit there until we close. So one person.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of times.
Oh, just
It's
one person.
just one person
Oh, one
sitting
person.
there, and so obviously, you know, they're taken. I see teens using the closed door study rooms, especially ones with whiteboards, more than anything else. But once in a while, when the hives are free, I do see groups of teenagers going to them. They don't generally sit in the teen area. They don't. The booths were popular for a while before COVID, but now they have lost their luster. I'm not sure, but not too many teens go there to study. I think because it's out in the open and they want
Probably.
to be
Yeah.
in a room. They want to be in a corner.
Yeah.
Even like the tables that kind of line the walls by the hives, not too often are they there either.
Yeah.
I think they want privacy.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, when they're at work, they're in cubicles.
Yep.
Right, so you got temporary walls that you put up if you were to have something like that. And I think also a gentle nudge to folks where you have something on the table. You know, these things accommodate up to 4 people. please limit, if you're here by yourself, please limit the amount of time that
Nobody
you
reads
take away
science,
from
Mike.
somebody else.
Nobody reads tabletoppers, nobody reads anything.
Well, it does beg
Well,
the
you know what,
question
they're not
that-
gonna.
In a library.
They
In a
may not
library.
possibly.
Really not.
See, that's the
Nobody
problem when
reads
you
in
have
a
an
library.
optimist like me in there.
Right.
You won't know unless you put
Right.
it there.
Or I just think
I
like,
agree.
I'm a good citizen. I read signs everywhere. 'Cause
I
I,
agree.
I know
I
how
do
much
too.
work
I
goes
read-
into
I
those
read
signs.
I
Um,
admit, I don't always read science.
I realize
Not
we're I just looked at the clock. We're having such a good conversation.
yeah.
We're definitely past our time, so everyone we can feel free to kind of start putting a bow on this. But I wonder if the question then around space is not about space of the library, but the space usage of those reservable spaces. And what if there were
Right.
more reservable spaces?
Mhm.
So maybe your furniture doesn't change at all, but the hives become reservable. I mean, again, more intervention from
Yeah.
staff, and I'm certainly not endorsing you all spending your time specifically that way. But what if community feedback was like, yeah, we want these rooms to turn over, and it would be great if, reservations, if I could reserve that, then I could come
Or
in
maybe
and know
just
that
we
it's
get
for
rid
me.
of some of the furniture and make more rooms.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
I know that costs more money, but,
And going back to your point, the short term goal could be, we want to create, more turnover in these spaces and
Yeah.
make them available for all. And the long term plan, or the longer term plan, is we need to study these spaces and see if there's a more high functioning use for this corner that might, maybe you could get two steel case, kind of the
That you can hang
cubicles.
whiteboards on.
Yeah.
and stuff like
So you've
that.
got
Yeah.
two of those steel case guys instead of one hive that's only being used by one or two. Now you've got two steel case rooms that are just inserts that are used by 4 people regularly. So you could have that space study be the long range, and the short term solution is something different.
Carrie, could you qualify, do community groups have to pay in order to reserve some space here?
Some spaces, so the only spaces that you have to pay for that you reserve is this room, the Phaedra room. And then the Sievert room, the board room, so that's
Okay.
not a study room.
Okay,
That is a community room for meetings
need to be reserved and paid for.
and paid for.
Okay.
And is that for, regardless of whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit?
Mine is
Different
too.
rates for for-profit,
Got it.
nonprofit, different rates for whether they're in Franklin or not. The only groups that generally we let use the room for free are any city departments.
Sure.
Then those, we do not charge for them.
Mhm.
But the study rooms, we have the 2 large study rooms, and then we have 3 small study rooms. The 3 small study rooms are first come, first serve, and then the 2 large study rooms you can reserve for up to 4 hours. And you can you can reserve them on a weekly basis for up to a month ahead of time. So you can, if you know you're gonna need to use the room on Tuesday from 12 to 3 for the next month, then you can come up to the desk and make that reservation.
Okay.
And I can look this up, but just say one more time how many times they can reserve in 1 month.
Well, they can reserve,
So there's not a limitation on how many.
how many?
But they can
There
do
probably is.
somewhere. Yeah.
Nobody should be listening to this.
But don't tell me.
Yeah, I know,
Just
don't
hold
tell
your
anybody.
hands up.
Yeah. They're probably, we don't encounter that, is what I should say.
Okay.
We don't have people reserving
You're
like
not-
a
yeah.
week
You
every
don't
day
have
for
people
4 hours.
monopolizing.
We don't
Okay.
have people doing that. So that is not something I think we've ever had to address. We had to address the time in the room,
Sure.
hence the 4-hour
Yeah.
limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the number of days in a month, we haven't really had to
Okay.
deal with that.
Okay.
So,
And having the reservations in place for all of this space is very helpful because you can track. You can track who's
Mhm,
using it, how
mhm,
long are they
mhm.
using it, how many times are they
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah. And again, it
Success.
goes back to that idea of there's pros and cons, right? There's more interventions that have to be made to sort of keep things moving. And yes, then there's also the richer data of this hive was used 12 times this month and only 6 people used it. So
Yeah.
then it's really small groups, and so maybe you would understand then that the smaller spaces might be better. Hypothetical, but yeah, you'd have richer data to go on if there are more reservations.
When we do that carpet replacement, is the plan to put everything back where it was?
as far as I know.
Okay.
When's that slated for?
November?
Okay.
November, yeah.
Okay.
for part of the library.
Yeah. Oh, those are so hard.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even, I will say too, when we got rid of a number of shelves in the nonfiction area and we put one of the long tables that was in the large study room because we got new furniture out there. And then there's 2 like square tables that fit 4 people. There's a lot of people that sit and study there too, even though they're kind of in close proximity to each other. Everybody is very respectful and it's very quiet. So even
That's great.
groups will sit next to each other, not necessarily teenagers, but like college kids for sure, new adults. Yeah, I think that's what they're being called now.
New adults.
New adults.
New adults, yeah.
Older kids.
Yeah, I mean, I just, our study spaces get used a lot. Every day, most of the small study rooms are constantly full. The large study rooms, depends on the day. But today I looked at the calendar and it was like, whoa, there were people in there like boom, 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 boom. And of course, if it's not occupied, the large study rooms, we do let patrons go in there. And then, you know, in order to try and track that information, we do put just like occupied on there. We don't take all their information. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's not necessary. But yeah, I mean, our study rooms have gotten, the use of the study rooms since COVID has like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Because everybody learns that they can
Skyrocketed.
be on computers.
Everybody works, well, not everybody, a
Right.
lot of
A
people
lot.
work remotely.
Yeah.
A
Well,
lot more
and I
than
think
everybody
in
works.
people's sort of desperation to find spaces, information was shared. That people sort of know, I can go here, I can go here, these are the
Oh,
pockets
yeah.
where I can, so sort of where word of mouth has been both advantage and disadvantage, right? People got that message that there are free places to go and easy places to get to.
Reliable Wi-Fi,
Yep.
Yeah.
free,
Mhm.
reliable Wi-Fi.
You don't
Tech
feel
help.
like you have to be buying coffee or food
Yeah.
or.
No, I mean, like, as a person, I work remotely and I am already a library lover, library user, but like when I'm on the road, that's where I stop. If I have an afternoon, right? I've got ample water, a bathroom, it's temperature controlled.
Mhm.
I know
Quiet.
exactly I know exactly how long I can stay.
Mhm.
It's typically an environment that is quiet enough to work in, but busy enough to not feel boring, right? I can bring home I picked up an audiobook today, guys, that I'm so excited about. I put it in my bag here somewhere, right? I can get stuff to take home. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. But yeah, I don't think that word wasn't out before COVID, and I think now it really is.
It really,
Yeah.
really wasn't, and it's just like, I think we needed more meeting rooms before COVID, but now it's like,
Yes.
we're a little bit bursting at the
Yes.
seams
Well,
situation.
and I do think bringing this conversation kind of full circle, in the end, all of the individuals at these community conversations that want the library to become some sort of club and hangout space, that's really what I think that's the core of it, is that, you know, their groups meet here. They come to programs here and they see these spaces and they see it being activated for both social and intellectual purposes. They see their friends here. They see teens kind of in these huddles and groups using these spaces. And so they think of it as this social hangout place, even though what they're not realizing is that all that intellectual, you know, neuron firing is happening in all this stuff. And so when they have the coffee shop idea, they just think like, how can we make this thing we like get even better and cooler and more like my living room? And nowhere in your mission does it say you have to be your community's living room. I mean, the fireplace kind of gives it like just a little nudge towards comfy, cozy, and welcome. But the meeting rooms capture the best of both worlds, right? You're doing library things. You're meeting, you're learning, you're connecting, you're informing, you're volunteering. All that's happening inside those meeting rooms, right? It just looks like a whole lot more fun than if you're looking from the outside, right? You're like, what are these teens doing? And meanwhile, they're probably doing like calculus or something really,
Yeah,
really
most
hard.
likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I walk into their study rooms and the whiteboard, I'm like, what?
What? I know. I know.
Yes.
So yeah, I think your community is seeing the good things that you want, and they just like, right? It's great. They want it to be even better. My action points that I've got for all of us is number one, to work with Jennifer and staff here to schedule time to catch parents of small children and ask them a few questions. That sounds a little more like kidnapping than I want it to, so I'll clean that language up.
Well, they
Let's-
get to keep their kids.
They can keep their
You're gonna
kids,
nab the
absolutely,
parents.
absolutely. I will also send today's meeting notes to all of you, as well as I'm actively working on my debrief report from the community conversations. So that'll be out to you as soon as possible. That is a very report style report. It's gonna tell you how we did it, what our SWOT analysis is, what my emerging goals, ideas, themes, whatever are coming out of that, and then you all can react to that. So the report is the report, because it's an internal document, it's not anything that you have to share, it's just for our committee. So we don't have to edit it any further, but we will absolutely discuss it further if that makes sense. Meanwhile, draft of the strategic plan, that we will edit together and won't be final until we say it's final. And then I will send these survey draft questions that I've been clacking away at here. I'll send those to you all right away so we can kind of workshop those together if that sounds good. Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you so much for staying a little bit later than expected. This was really, really fruitful for me. Hopefully, I know I'm asking really hard questions, but strategic plans are really hard. They don't come together easily, so you're doing really, really good work and you're helping me a lot, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.